Hello Swirly Savages. Today I'm going to share with you a little tutorial on how I made the Tim Holtz boxes. So these little glass bottles I actually picked up at the store, but those words came in the kit. So I'm just starting to set things up. I decided I wanted to use some paper clay and do a few Prima molds. I'm going to use one of the keyhole Prima molds in the smaller box. I'm just kind of working up the clay here so that I can go ahead and use one of the molds. I did use some Tim Holtz goodies that were in my stash, the little metal numbers, and the frame is a Prima frame that we actually got at Art Venture last year, so that was not part of the kit. And I do go ahead and pull out the molds while they're still wet and then let them dry for the most part. Using some embossing powder here, and just going to show you a little trick. So you can use your molds, your silicone molds as well, and put embossing powders in those, and then cover with some wax paper so the powder doesn't fly everywhere, and use your embossing gun to melt those. So it's a different way to use the molds. So I'm just using a Tim Holtz, I think it was in a copper or an antique gold. So the wax paper just kind of keeps the powder from flying around. Once it starts to melt on the top, then I go ahead and remove the paper and start hitting it so you make sure that the under layers are also getting melted. And just using a palette knife to kind of keep the back of the mold flat. Okay, so did some of the paper in the back and used just a green paint that I had on hand to paint the finials, and just kind of do some dry brushing around the outside of the boxes. So I didn't totally cover the boxes. I wanted it to look a little bit distressed. And I'm using 3D gloss gel to attach the wooden pieces to the boxes. I also hit the wood with a little bit of crackle paste and clear. And these are some of the Tim Holtz words that were included in the kit. And I'm just kind of using my fingernails to pull up the edges and make it look more distressed. And I had to hit it with some glue because I pulled it apart too much. And then I'll also use some distress ink around the curled up edges that I've made here to look even more antique-y. So the woman there, that's actually a cutout from the pattern paper that was included in the kit. And using just some more 3D gloss gel to attach that inside. On the paper on the inside as well, I did another trick that I've shown you before where I used some of the Prima planner glue and just swipe it inside on the paper in the corners, and then I used some of the deco foil in gold and rub that over where it's like the glue planner pin, and got some more detail on that paper. So then I took some of the small bottles that I'd purchased and just added some Prima beads inside, and then just glued the cork tops down so that way I don't have to worry about anything spilling later. Now I'm just brushing in the cracks. Remember I told you I used some crackle paste around the edges of the frame. So that crackle paste is dried. And then I just brush some artesian powder into the cracks, and that's just so you can get some more definition on those cracks and really see those. So using some Prima flowers here and leaving some pretty long stems on those so I can put those in one of the glass jars, kind of making a flower vase in the corner. And I didn't glue those flowers in anyway, so that way we can rearrange those later. This is one of the smaller Prima glass files, and then I just put some perfect pearls inside there, and those flowers are going to stay because that perfect pearls will dry and they'll stay as they're arranged. So now on this clay piece, it still wasn't quite dry, and that's okay. You can go ahead and hit that with your heat gun until you get kind of a dry crust over the top, and then it's okay to go ahead and start painting it. And then I hit it with the heat gun again to dry that, and then I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and make sure the back is a little bit dry, and go ahead and hit that with some 3D gloss gel as well and stick that down inside. Here I'm just filling another one of the little glass vials up with some pearls, or some mini beads, I'm sorry. So the last touch I didn't show you is I used some Tim Holtz tape, the bias tape or ribbon, and spritzed it with a pink that we got in a prior kit, some Prima balloons, and tied that to the bottom. And then there's both of those. So that bumblebee is the embossing powder that I used in the silicone mold. So you can see how that turned out. And I did go ahead and hit it with the heat gun and bend the wings up a little bit there.